Well, thank you again for joining me. It's March 2017. Dadhichi here with the introduction to the 12 readings that I normally give every month. So those of you who are new, welcome. And I would very much like to start this month with an issue surrounding the idea of faith. And why, you may ask? Because Saturn is now just in the last 4 degrees of the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the natural 9th house of the zodiac, and it relates to spirituality, faith, religion, politics, the higher mind, and I guess those sort of areas within ourselves that are connected to ethics, morals, and to a large extent the immaterial. I was just having a look here at the definition of trust, or rather faith, and it says here complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And the second one is a more specific definition related to religious beliefs, saying strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. And it's interesting because I've had quite a few discussions lately with people who are really, really hardcore believers in whatever religion it is. And it's funny how the same, I guess, standards that are applied to day-to-day life, everyday life, simply are not applied to the issue of faith. In particular, the faith in a specific God or religious belief, the hereafter. And usually the conversations go along the lines of, look, what I'm trying to say here in abbreviated form is I'm all for consistency. I've got no problem with people having a certain belief if that's what they want to do. The problem I have is where the burden of proof which is applied to day-to-day activities is just not extended to this particular area. I mean, if someone fell down with a heart attack right now, say a minister or the Pope himself, these people proclaim their faith, but I guarantee you there's not one Pope in history that hasn't been rushed to the hospital to rely on any sort of medical procedure that may save them. I don't recall the last time the pontiff fell sick and the Bible was pulled out to pray to their particular deity to save the head of the church. And I think that goes for all of us. We proclaim faith, but for the most part, we don't actually live that faith. So that's in a roundabout way what I'm trying to say. And really the movement of Saturn in the 9th house, the natural house, Sagittarius, of faith and beliefs, will, to a large extent, for all of us, to put our faith under the microscope. But you have to be ruthlessly honest with yourself and admit that the faith you proclaim, I mean, even if I had to go under the scalpel, I have a high degree of faith in medical science, but, there's always that lingering doubt that something may go wrong, and there are people that die under the anesthesia. So even with those things that have been proven to us scientifically, we can't always have 100% proof. And I think the point I make here, I hope I've made the point, is that even the proclamation of faith in any sort of religious belief or doctrine is usually very, very quickly dismissed when a circumstance arises and that particular faith is put to the test. But there are a lot of other different types of faith. I don't want to harp wholly and solely on religious faith. There's faith in human nature, faith in business, faith in marriage, in relationships. A lot of these areas we also acknowledge that the proclamation of faith, even based on our own individual experiences, don't warrant that faith. And so it's not even really a matter of faith. Someone who's been divorced, take Elizabeth Taylor, who was married 7 or 8 times, wouldn't exactly have faith. When they say faithful, maybe I should rephrase that perhaps the husbands that married Elizabeth Taylor, those individuals of the 8 who married her, would have very little faith, but even Elizabeth herself probably would have had very little faith based upon her historic experience. We would probably say in her case it would be more a matter of hope, not faith. So this issue of faith is an interesting one, and I think it comes back to, if I have to use a religious example or context, is the one where in the Christian Bible the Lord Jesus was healing people, even bringing them back from the dead, and of course they jumped for joy and fell at his feet when they were restored to their former well-being, and thanked Jesus for healing them. And Jesus was always quick to retort that it is not I who have healed you, but your own faith. So it really is, I guess, the belief system. And there are instances, even scientifically, where the expected circumstances, such as death or cancer or diseases, are completely overturned, and not by the medical science, but by the faith of the individual themselves, not in something outside themselves. And I think this is what even the religious doctrines are saying, such as that example there. So this transit of Saturn through the 9th house will challenge your beliefs. It will bring your dogmas, your belief systems under the microscope. And then you will be forced to question, what exactly is it that you are professing your faith or your belief in? If you do not have that faith or belief in yourself, and let's face it, even Elizabeth Taylor, going into her 8th marriage, would have had some doubts about herself. That doubt is itself the undermining factor in any venture, any religious circumstance. But, I repeat an example that I also like, and that is the one of faith in prayer. I do believe that prayer, and it has been indicated in some studies, that there is a change in the biochemistry. But I would put it to you that a person who is an amputee and has faith that his prayer is going to grow his limb back is probably under some form of self-delusion, because there has never in history been a case of any amputee growing back a limb. So there are cases where faith can have positive effects on the mind. I am a believer that faith, and not just profession of faith, but actual action based upon that belief is really what it's all about. So Saturn will challenge you. It has a little bit more of a transit to go this year, another 12 months actually. It's going to be going backwards and forwards. So many of you will be going through this question of faith, belief. What exactly does my belief system do for me? This question arose this morning here in the Philippines, where I was asking a woman who was quite proudly saying she donates money to the church every week, as do millions and tens and hundreds of millions here, peasants, poverty-stricken individuals, putting money on the plate, and usually a beggar goes around begging for money. And I asked her, well, the church doesn't really need to beg for money. What exactly do you get out of putting that money on the plate? Wouldn't it be better to put the money on the open hand of a starving child? And she honestly couldn't answer. It was simply that her faith was built upon a history of conditioning, cultural conditioning, parental conditioning, and just this idea that, well, I've done it all my life, my parents have done it all their life, so I guess that's what I believe. So the challenge here also is, look, if I could just swing back to the middle ground, is that it's not a question of not having any faith at all, but as in that instance, critically assessing your faith to see what the practical benefits, either to yourself, your neighbour, your family, or the world for that matter, can be gained through that faith. So in short, I'm saying the faith must have some practical application. Otherwise, it really is meaningless. So do think about that. I didn't want to Bible bash or hit you with all of that from any sort of religious angle or persecution sort of angle. I'm just asking you, as the planet Saturn is, to re-examine your values. This is the nature of Saturn moving through this 9th house of the natural zodiac. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk a little bit about that planet and also the other planets and how they may be affecting you throughout this coming month of March 2017. Stay tuned, and thanks again for your company.